Hello and welcome. Thanks for joining in at our Melapress live Q&A. Today with me I have Joel. How are you, Joel?
Hello, good thanks. How are you, Robert?
Good. Thanks. Busy preparing for WordCamp. Uh,
Yes.
exactly. Yeah. Before we start, a few housekeeping things. We do these live streams every week on Thursday at 4 p.m. Central European Time or at 11 Eastern Time. However, today we are not live. This is a recorded session because by the time we publish this, we'll be at WordCamp Europe. As you know, not in this session, but when we're live, you can ask us any questions during live sessions. But if you're watching this or any other recorded session, you can always email us at questions@melapress.com and we'll answer your questions during the next live sessions. Also, very important, we are running the yearly WordPress security survey in which we basically ask a number of security questions to get an idea of the security state of WordPress websites, and then we'll publish the results later on this year to help everyone and the community about and make WordPress users aware about these things. So please take the survey by clicking on the link on the description. So yeah, I was just saying. By the time we publish this, we'll be at WordCamp Europe. Joel, are you excited for WordCamp Europe?
Very excited, and looking forward to being in Basel as well, and meeting with the rest of the team, meeting with clients and partners, and sort of taking in the atmosphere at WCEU.
Yes, there's always a certain. I've been going there since the first WordCamp Europe, also with meetups, but especially WordCamps, the bigger ones like WordCamp Europe. There's a certain level of energy and positivity.
Exactly.
Yeah, and whenever you come out from there, you get all this like motivation to do more and even help more and stuff like that. And it's also
For
nice,
sure.
as you said, we work. We are a remote business. Not most. I don't know the exact number, but many WordPress businesses are remote. Many of the partners we deal with, yeah, we don't live in the same country, so it's always nice once a year to meet these people and yeah, catch up and yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
There's a really nice atmosphere. So if you've never been to any WordCamp, I highly recommend it, especially if you are following or working with WordPress. Today we'll be talking a bit about brute force attacks. Joel, let's start. Yeah, with when I say brute force, yeah, what comes to mind in you? Like what?
So the first thing we need to understand is that there are different types or classes of brute force attacks. The most basic one is basically where you have a bot that has found your login page, and once it does, it will try every combination possible of username and passwords until it hits the right one. So that's the most basic. So it starts from A and A, then A, so on and so forth. That is the most basic. Of course, there are more sophisticated brute force attacks. For example, if a database of username and passwords has been leaked, they will try those. Many people tend to recycle their passwords on different websites, so there's a higher chance of getting it right. Or else they might know the username and then they'll just try the password, which is obviously going to cut the time in half. So anyway, there are different types of brute force attacks, but the idea is to gain legitimate access, in this case, to your WordPress website.
Yeah, trying to guess your credentials. Yeah, in fact, it's like just from the technical point of view, technical terms, you are right. Like there are different ones. Like, but yeah, the traditional brute force attack is the first one you explained, where just like the attacker like tries different combinations, which are typically random generated, as you said, like A or and different types, and they're trying different types of combinations to try and guess it. But as you said, that's slower because, of course, it requires more guesses per account if you ever get it. The other one, the last, is credential stuffing, which is what you said. Like basically, attackers use what we call a dictionary. A dictionary is basically a list of previously leaked usernames and password combinations, and try to attack that website. Try to guess those credentials on a particular target website. It's more efficient, of course, especially because credentials in the dictionary are real credentials used by real people, and it can be a bit more targeted because, for example, let's say a database from Gmail passwords was leaked, and there's a certain there are certain users with certain emails on a specific website, then of course the attack is more targeted. And yeah, it's very common. Unfortunately, a lot of users use the same website, use the same password for different services, for a website, for an online shop, an e-commerce, and also for their Gmail. So yeah,
Exactly.
that's about it. And like, in your opinion, why do you think like WordPress is kind of like a common target when it comes to brute force attacks?
So I do not think that hackers are targeting WordPress as such, but because WordPress makes up, I think it's around 46% now.
For it's more than 40, so that's already like a
Uh,
very big
uh,
number. Yeah,
exactly, exactly. So just by the ratio of number of WordPress websites, WordPress is going to be targeted just because everyone is using WordPress basically,
yeah,
rather than hackers looking out for WordPress websites specifically.
exactly. In fact, yeah, it's very important to point out that most of these attacks usually are automated. I mean, like, unless you have a very popular website and you have become your website have become has become a target of someone. Yeah, it's common. Like there are like automated scanners and crawlers crawling the internet, trying to match. Like it's known. Like if you go to the website /wp-admin, that is the default WordPress login page, or wp-login.php. So yeah, there are crawlers and scanners trying to find this random domains and scanning. And whenever they try /wp -admin, they get a response, and a 200 response, which means that page exists. Then of course that the brute force attack is automatically launched. So yeah, as you said, Joe, like it's all automated, and since WordPress, yeah, powers definitely more than 40% of the websites on the internet, of course, it has become just a question of numbers. It has become a very, very common target. And yeah, like back in the days, hopefully it's not, but back in the days, the default username used to be admin, so it was a very common, like the admin.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, that was a common problem. Nowadays, of course, when you're installing WordPress, you get a random admin username, so that helps. But yeah, and that's one of the main reasons why WordPress is a big target, because of course a lot of people are using it, and there's a lot. It's a basically high value target, quite frankly. There are other risks associated with brute force, uh, resource exhaustion. So basically, if your website is experiencing a brute force attack, there's a lot of CPU which is being used because it's handling all these requests, the bandwidth. If you have some systems in place, some legitimate users might be locked out. And yeah, like unfortunately, if it's hacked, for example, it can be used as a launchpad. So it's very important to point out that brute force attacks and any other type of attacks, it doesn't necessarily mean, because some people say like, oh, we're not that popular. Like, who would want to hack our website? We don't have payment details on our website, stuff like that. The question is like, the problem here, it's not that someone is targeting your website for the data you have. In most cases, like, they want to hack it to use it as a launchpad, as a stepping stone for further attacks, to install backdoors on it, spam SEO hacks, or to attack other websites from that one. Any other thing, Joe? So we
Exactly.
had, yeah, of course, the credentials problem, resource exhaustion, CPU, bandwidth, and stuff, lockout of legitimate users, any any other side effects?
Yeah,
Let's put this way of
yeah. Depending on the payload, you can get reputational damage if
yeah, if your website is
they
offline.
change. Yeah,
Yeah.
if it's either website goes offline, or they change certain elements, or they link to, let's say, undesirable sites. There's a lot they can do. They can be
Mm.
very creative, unfortunately.
Yeah, once it's hacked, I know, but in terms before it's hacked, like if your website is at the moment experiencing brute force attack, yeah, I think the biggest problem is yeah, like the resource exhaustion,
Yeah. In that
lockout
case,
of
yeah,
legitimate users, because as we were saying, like your website might be offline for an extensive period of time, or yeah, you might,
for
yeah,
sure.
exactly. Um, so how, as a website owner, how can someone detect a brute force attack? Do you have any tips to share?
So there are a number of ways that you can detect a brute force attack. So if you have an activity log plugin,
Mm.
you'll see the failed logins in your log viewer. If you have a firewall, it should alert you as well. If users are unable to log in without any specific reason, might be a telltale sign that currently you're experiencing a brute force attack, the website slows down or goes offline. These are all possible, let's say, indicators that you're experiencing a brute force attack, with the exception of activity log, which is very precise. Like if it tells you there's a lot of failed logins, then you're definitely experiencing a brute force attack.
Exactly. Yeah. In fact, quite frankly, kind of like similar to what you said, but to add something more. Yeah, sudden spikes in failed login attempts, traffic spikes on the on specifically on the login page or the XML RPC.php file, and but yeah, as you said, using a plugin like WP Activity Log, yeah, you can spot patterns like unusual logins at odd times, for example, from foreign IPs and attempts like that. So the bandwidth aspect, you cannot do much. So if your website is a victim is experiencing brute force attack, like if it gets too much, if it's you're there's a lot of bandwidth being consumed, the website's offline, you cannot do much in most cases. I mean, the best thing you can do is to contact your web host, right? Or so they can.
At that point, yes, yes, exactly.
Yes, I mean there is no point, because I know like some people try to, for example, block an IP address using the htaccess file or something like that, but yeah, as we always say, Joe, it's a bit of a cat and mouse game, no? Because
Exactly, exactly, exactly.
yeah, IPs can easily be spoofed. Everything is automated. They can easily scale and use different IPs. So if it's a
Very,
bandwidth
very easily.
problem, exactly, yeah, contact your if you have a CDN or web host, they take it. But let's say it's not that high. It's not the attack. It's not that bad. Let's say, for example, you're just experiencing a low brute force attack. But so as a website administrator, to protect your website from brute force attacks, apart from, of course, dealing with the web host. But in general, like, what are the best practices, let's say, to kind of like avoid having your website being, if there's a brute force attack, to avoid someone guessing your credentials?
So if we're talking about like preemptive measures that you can take to reduce the risk of brute force attacks, so there's a number of things that you can do. You don't have to implement them all, but you can implement a number of them. The first one, so as you mentioned earlier, most brute force attacks are done by a bot or a crawler that basically looks for WP admin and then starts filling in the credentials. So the first thing
Automatically,
that you can
exactly.
do,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly, without any human intervention. So the first thing that you can do to make it more difficult for these bots and crawlers to find your login page is to hide the login page, basically. And it can be done very easily with Melapress token security. And basically what it does is it will change the login URL from WP admin to anything you want.
Yeah, and it's a free
Uh,
plugin, by the way. Just think, yeah, quickly, yeah,
exactly,
free
exactly,
plugin. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, so it's available in the free edition of the plugin. Um, uh, and basically, it will change the login URL to anything you want. We suggest doing something very random, so it makes it more difficult for these bots to find.
It's very important to point out, by the way, because it's a very valid point. Because some people might tell you, "Oh, but I have customers logging into the website." What is very important, like usually when you have customers logging, it depends what you're using. But if you have any e-commerce website, for example, there are two login pages. There's the login page for the admins, the one which Joel is mentioning, but there's also like the page where there are where there's my account, the my account page, for example. It's very, very rare where these pages are detected because, of course, as we said, these are automated crawlers. So in 99% of the cases, yeah, we're talking about the login page, the backend page where administrators log in. So having a long random URL is not a problem. It's not that your customers have to remember. This is only basically for you, for the admin, and for your team, right? So the people who work.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
good. And so yeah, Use a plugin to hide the login page. What else, Joel? What do you think? What?
So on the same lines, if we're dealing with the bots and crawlers, excuse me, one thing that we can do is to add a captcha.
Okay. Okay, can you
Uh,
explain a bit more? Like, as in, like, how does it work, the captcha in this context?
yeah. So in this context, basically, the captcha test needs to be fulfilled in order for the bot to press send.
Yeah, to send
So
the request to authenticate. Right.
exactly, to send a request to authenticate. Exactly. So basically, even though like with AI, maybe the older versions of CAPTCHA aren't as useful as they used to be, but there are newer versions of CAPTCHA that look at different things, and it will basically prohibit the bot from submitting the credentials.
Yeah. Some of them actually, sometimes I get stuck on some Google one. It's so difficult. Like, check the boxes where there's a motorbike and there's like a piece of
Yeah,
wood
like
there. Like, should I take that box or no? Like, you try it. Oh, you get another one. So, so
but
yeah,
in reality, what the captcha is doing is like it doesn't really matter if you click it or not. What it's looking is at how you're going about it rather than what you're clicking.
exactly. Yeah,
So
that's a very
there's some intelligence behind it.
exactly. That's a very important thing. In fact, in the Captcha for WP plugin, which yeah, it's no longer ours, but yeah, we used to have something we've learned. So basically, you can when you sorry, when you use Captcha on your website, you can actually enable some sort of like script that runs on all the pages, and the Captcha service basically determines if traffic is spam or not, as Joe said, not just by clicking images, but by analyzing the pattern in which they are accessing pages, how long they take to access pages, if they're submitting a form and stuff like that. So yeah.
Exactly,
So yeah.
exactly.
So we're adding CAPTCHA. So we said, okay, so we hide the login page. We're adding CAPTCHA to the login page as well. What else, Joel?
So another thing that we can do is to have a firewall,
Good point. Very good point.
which kind
Firewall, I
of
think, apart
takes care
from
of.
blocking, yeah, it's also good, of course, because it can alert you when there are certain things. It can alert you, like certain spikes in traffic. Yeah, it can alert you of those things, right?
Exactly. And then there are two more things that we can look at. One is user account security, and the other one, which we will discuss last, is geo-blocking and doing IP restrictions.
Nice.
So if we had to start, sorry, go ahead, Robert.
No, I was going. Yeah, we can start with user account security. Of course, there's a lot to dive into. Do you want to start? Yeah.
Exactly. So first and foremost is to limit login attempts, and what this does is basically it gives users a finite amount of tries. So user can only can only submit username and password, for example, 5 times every hour or every day.
Or
And if it's
the fade login attempts, right? Because it's
yeah, yes, exactly,
because you
yeah,
can log in
failed login
multiple
attempt.
times. You can also, by the way, you can also throttle that one as well, as in like control how many times a user logs in or logs out. But in this case, when it comes to limiting login attempts, not logins, the attempts. So if a user or if someone submits incorrect credentials, yeah, like first, there are two types, by the way. So there are plugins which do it like by blocking the IP. So if they see an IP address submitting failed login attempts, they block that IP address. However, it's not bad, but as we discussed before, this type of approach, you're playing a cat and mouse game because, like, yeah, they can change the IP and try from somewhere else. The other approach, which is also in the free edition of Melapress login security, which is our plugin, basically we log the user account. So if there are failed login attempts, as in like random users which don't actually exist on the website, you don't do much about it because there's no point, kind of thing. As in like if that is taking a lot of bandwidth, that should be something handled by the web host rather than you. But if there are failed login accounts on a specific username which exists on the website, then the plugin logs that user account. And the reason why we do it, because of course, the fact that someone is targeting a specific username, it means that they already know the username. So they only have to guess the password. So as soon as there are, as Joel said, like you can configure the plugin and say, okay, if there are 5 login attempts for a user within an hour, for example, this is all configurable, of course. Then log that user for X amount of hours, or and unlock it automatically after X hours, or only the administrator can unlock it. So there are a few options, but yeah. So you can limit failed login attempts, you can limit the IP address, but as we said, it's a bit of a cat and mouse game. So if it's a question of bandwidth and IPs, I would go to the web host. But if it's a question of targeting specific users, then yeah, use a solution that locks actually the usernames, right, Joe?
Exactly, definitely.
Good.
And something else that we can do is to have a strong password policy. So there's a number of things that we can do. So obviously we can enforce a complexity policy. So number of characters, whether you use special characters, the enforced or numerical, so on and so forth. Password length, and this reduces the risk, excuse me, of users recycling their passwords from other websites
Good.
if you make the policy unique enough. And on the same lines as the policy, you can prohibit password recycling. So, for example, to not allow the user to use any of the last 3, 5, 10 passwords, password automatic expiry. So, even if the password ends up leaked somewhere, by the time it finds itself into the hands of the bad actor trying to gain access to your website, that password would have been changed. So, for
Yes.
example, if you have a password expiry policy of like 3 months, for example, so every 3 months the password has to be changed, and they can't use any of the last 10. So, with each element in the policy, we are reducing the risk, basically.
Good. Yeah, one thing I'd like to point out with password policies, I've done a presentation about this a few weeks ago on the Page Builder Online Summit. Because users, I mean, it's very important, of course, that as in the website owners, enforce strong password policies. However, it's very important to understand that, especially for not even technical users, it's for users, it's very frustrating to come up with a different passwords every month, 2 months, etc., and stuff like that. So it's very important when you enforce password policies. It is also very important to uh, advise your users to use password managers, because otherwise, like, even when sometimes when you enforce password policies on their own, there are ways how to work around it. For example, you can go for a password like 123 ABC capitals, and three characters, question mark, for example, exclamation mark. One
Yeah,
month later, you just change one character or two. So there are still ways around it, unfortunately. So yeah, it's very important to at least raise awareness with users, use a password manager, because when you use a password manager, first of all, you just have to remember one password. Secondly, it depends what password manager you use, but if you use an online solution, you can have the password manager on your laptop, on your mobile, and other devices, so it's really convenient. And thirdly, yes, the password managers, they generate random passwords themselves. So you're almost, if you enforce password policies on a website and users use password managers, users don't have to worry about passwords because it's all automated. Because whenever they need to reset the password or whatever, the password generator will take care of it. And you, as a site admin, you you can put your head at rest and say, okay, at least passwords are being taken care of, and that makes it easy
yeah,
to use a different password every month. It makes it easy to use a different password for different services. So this is very important. Like, as in, like, it's it's very frustrating for users to use difficult passwords. So by enforcing password policies and also using a password manager, that solves a lot of issues.
exactly, for sure.
Good. So we've said, okay, so we've done quite a bit. So we've changed the login page URL basically. So it's not the default one. So you already, like, as it's important to point out that this is not like a 100% fail-safe solution. I mean, in all fairness, there is no complete solution that covers you against everything.
Ever,
Yeah.
yeah.
But as we always say, like, the question is about like building different layers and different bits and pieces. You're always making it a bit more difficult for the attacker to yeah, like, and as we said, like when you hide the login page, if someone is targeting you specifically, they are going to find the login page, but at least you are evading 99% of the automated attacks on the internet. So you're already like one.
Exactly, exactly.
So we hide the login page,
It's
we said, sorry, yeah,
it's all about risk management and risk reduction, not risk elimination, which cannot be.
exactly. So we're hiding login page, we're adding capture to the credentials. Firewall is very important, some sort of CDN or firewall. And we're now looking into user account security, Joey, right? We said like strong
Correct, correct,
passwords.
correct.
You can again, it really depends on who's logging into your website and how they log in, but you can also limit IP addresses, for example, like from which IP addresses can users log in. But yeah, there's a lot you can do. But yeah, by limiting login attempts and enforcing strong passwords, you're already doing quite a lot. And I think we're missing a very important one, Joe. What do you think? Two-factor
Factor authentication,
authentication. Sorry.
exactly. That's going to be my next one, in
Yeah,
fact,
sure,
because
sure. Want to listen a bit more? Yeah.
speaking of passwords, and the natural sort of link
Mm.
is two-factor authentication. So for those who don't know, two-factor authentication is very simple, and the premise behind it is that in addition to your username and password, you authenticate a second time using a different medium. So if the first one is username and password, which is something we know, uh, with two-factor authentication, you're going to authenticate a second time with, for example, something you have, which is, for example, your mobile phone. So on your mobile phone, you can install an authenticator app, which provides you an OTP, what's called an OTP, one-time passcode. It changes every 30 seconds, so it's not really one time. Eventually, it's going to have to recycle, usually for numbers long, or six or four,
Six,
six,
six.
six,
But
six, six, six,
nowadays,
six.
many services are switching to
Mm,
eight digits as well.
mm.
I
I
mean,
plan
the
the
longer it
second.
is, of course. I mean, yeah, the more
Yeah, the more secure. Yeah,
exactly, and the more probabilities you have, yeah, the more combinations you can do.
exactly, exactly,
Yes,
exactly. Yeah, yeah. So you enter this six-digit number, which you get from your phone, and only at that point you get access to your account and the WordPress backend.
exactly. Yeah, and it's very because some people like, oh, because if I implement to a face too difficult for my users might get blocked out. A few points worth highlighting. First of all, to a face becoming like really common. If you use online banking, you are using some sort of multi-factor authentication, two-factor authentication,
Exactly.
definitely. Um, if
If
you are
an
sorry,
ATM, if you use an ATM, you're using two-factor authentication.
yeah, you have the card. And without the card, of course, you cannot withdraw money, and you have the PIN.
And the
Uh,
PIN, exactly, exactly.
exactly. So it's very common. And nowadays, like companies like Google, Facebook, and many others are all pushing for two-factor authentication. Um, it's worth pointing out you can implement 2FA with our free plugin as well. WP2FA is completely free. I mean, there's the premium edition, and the premium you get, of course, much more features, but the free edition is more than enough for a good solid 2FA solution. And in regards, Joel mentioned like you can get typically the most common are like you get one-time code. So you try to log in, you enter your username and password, and once you try to log in, you either get a code via email or you get a code via an app. Now, it's also important to point out that most authenticator apps are also available for free. So you can install a plugin for free. You can use an authenticator app for free, and you're done. It's very important. I would recommend using an authenticator app and not email. Leave email as a backup solution because emails, there are few, as in like it's very unreliable. Unfortunately, I mean, it depends on which website, but in general, unfortunately, we've noticed that many websites don't have a reliable email system. So it's better to use the app. By the way, and if you are kind of like skeptic about users being locked out, there are what we call backup methods. So when you configure to FA the first time, you can either configure, for example, to use the one-time code via email and backup code as email, or what we call backup codes. So basically, when you configure the first time to FA, you get a list of codes, one-time codes, which you can print or store somewhere. So in case you forgot your mobile, I don't know, or the app is not available because of some other reason, you can always still log in using one of the backup codes or log in by receiving a code via email. So it's very easy.
Correct.
Yeah. I think we've covered almost. What else? Is there anything else, Joey? So we said in terms of user security. So we had strong passwords, limit failed login attempts, 2FA, of course. I think that's about it. No, of course, more. I think monitoring and logging, it applies here as well, as in that you're monitoring the login page, you're monitoring the user. So activity logging is very important across the board, right?
Yes, yes, it is critical actually, because it's not only keeping a record of what is happening, but through things such as notifications, it can alert us when certain things happen. So if there's been, for example, 5 failed looking attempts, then we can receive a notification that lets us know, so we can respond to the incident in a timely manner.
Exactly. Yeah. I
But
think. Sorry.
sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. It's okay.
I was going to move on to the next point. So if
Okay,
you have
okay. It was
anything.
good point. So before we move to the next point, something that's related to the users, which kind of thing like is also very important. It's very important to educate the users and clients. Unfortunately, most vulnerabilities, this is not specifically brute force, but it's good. It's still good to mention it. Most issues occur due to human errors, or yeah, like train clients and users to understand more, like try to identify phishing attempts. As we said, like push for users to use password manager so they avoid using the same passwords. And this is coming from the administrator point of view. Make sure we use user roles. User roles are very important. Every user, you mentioned this a couple of times, Joel, the principle of least privileges, basically. Every
Yep.
user should have the right privileges to do their work, so they shouldn't have less privileges, but they shouldn't have more. So as a user, sorry, as an admin, make sure that you use user roles correctly. If the default user roles in WordPress are not enough for what you're doing, you can use a plugin like Melapress Role Editor. It's completely free. It's our latest price. It's relatively new. And with the Melapress role editor, you can literally like create custom rows and copy existing rows and assign multiple rows to users. So those are very important. So educating the users and raising awareness about possible type of attacks, etc., and how to have basic user account security hygiene. That's very important. So we've covered the
Yep.
users as
Yep.
well. Joel, what else we said? We go.
So the last thing I wanted to mention, it's a supplementary, let's say, method that can allow you to reduce the risk of brute force attacks is to limit the login times.
That's very very important. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. You want to explain
Yeah,
maybe what it means?
sure. So this is a feature which is available in Melapress Token Security. And what you can do is either by user role or site-wide, limit when a user can log into the website. So, for example, if people work Monday to Friday, 8 to 5, and typically there's no reason why anyone would log in outside of those hours, we can set up a policy that restricts users to log in within those times. And if they attempt to log in outside of those hours, which in our case, in this example, it's Monday to Friday, 8 to 5, they will not be able to log in. And obviously, what we're doing is restricting the time window in which brute force attack can take place.
Good. That's a very good point. Yeah, very good point. And of course, there are a few more things we can do. Geo blocking, restricted. But yeah, it starts getting, yeah. But yeah, I think
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. So basically, by if you go through it through all of these, what we've mentioned. So first, hide the login page, which means change the URL of your login page. Add captcha to your login page. So before someone submits the username and password, they have to also confirm the captcha. So it kind of like throttles how many times a bot can try to submit credentials. Firewall, or some, it could be a plugin firewall, but ideally it should be an online firewall. There are a few technical reasons why online firewalls are better than the plugin firewalls. We can dive into those some other time. User account security, which is strong passwords, use 2FA, limit failed login attempts, and of course user awareness, user education, use password manager, stuff like that. And last, as Joe was saying, yeah, like IP restrictions and limit the times users can log into your website. I think that's mostly covered when it comes to brute force attacks. As we said, like if it's like not a very high load brute force attack, you can, first of all, regardless of if your website has ever experienced a brute force attack or no, I really recommend no, you should use these best practices, security practices, right, Joel? Like,
Definitely, 100%.
yeah,
As you very well mentioned in the beginning of the session, it's not necessarily that someone is looking to attack you personally, but it's more like they cast a wide fishing net and you end up caught in it.
exactly.
Because then they don't have to use your data. They can use your website to attack someone else, to insert bad links, so on and so forth. So it's always best to take preemptive measures, even if you don't feel that no one's going to be after you, basically.
So yeah, security best practices are very important regardless of brute force attacks. But by following these things we've just discussed today, your website will be much better in case of a brute force attack. If small brute force attacks, as we said, by following these security best practices, you can handle them and there were no issues. However, if things are escalating, too much bandwidth is being used, all the resources on your web server are being used, and there's just no point in handling it. It's very important to talk to your web host so they can stop it
Exactly.
at server level. Anything else, Joel?
Exactly.
We need to add or
Uh, Two things that you mentioned, maybe it's worth expanding on a little bit, which is geo-blocking and IP restrictions.
okay? Can you explain especially IP restrictions? I think everyone knows. You basically restrict from which IP addresses users can log in. Maybe you want to explain what's geo blocking for those
Yeah,
who aren't
yeah.
familiar?
Sure, sure. So, as we mentioned earlier, IP restrictions can be a bit of a cat and mouse game. There are scenarios where it makes sense. However, when it's a brute force attack, maybe not so much. A step up from IP restrictions is geo-blocking, where basically you are restricting a subset of IPs based on their source country or their origin country rather. So, for example, if all of my users are based in the United States, then I can block anyone else from even attempting to log in.
Exactly. So
So, if
you're
the IP
allowing.
address,
Sorry. Go ahead.
so if the IP address is not a United States IP address, then that connection automatically gets blocked.
Exactly. Yeah, and you can do it. Yeah, for geography. Yeah, it's like based on countries basically. So we can say, listen, everyone from the US can log in, everyone else is blocked, or the other way around, for example, or yeah.
Exactly. As in, the system is quite flexible, so I can only allow access to, or I can block access to. So, for example, if I have a website that's international, but no one's going to be logging in from specific countries, then I can go ahead and block those countries,
Exactly.
rather than block everyone except the country that we're based in.
Good.
So there is some configurability, and this allows you to be more precise depending on your circumstances, requirements, etc.
Good. Okay, I think that's it. Yeah, I think we can so a few how a few items to remind you. Please, if you haven't done it yet, please take our security survey. The link will be available in the description below. If you have any questions, send us an email at questions@melapress.com, and we'll answer your questions during the next live session. And yeah, as we said, this session is not live. Today will be at WordCamp. So yeah, if you're watching this and you are at WordCamp in Basel, please
Yeah, come say hello.
exactly come and say hello. Come and visit our booth. We'll be more than happy to talk to you. I mean, like it's as we said in the beginning of this session. Yeah, the energy at WordCamp is really nice. Everyone is very friendly. So if you ever have the opportunity to visit to attend the WordCamp, make sure you visit. Thanks a lot, Joel. Thanks for
Definitely.
your time, and yeah, we'll see you at the
Thank
next one.
you.
Thanks, and
Yeah, cheers.
I'll see you in Basel.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks.